Scott, I wanted to start by asking you about a pro's approach to physical upside when the tape shows a lot of need for development, but the testing numbers suggest exceptional potential. What is the process like to balance out physical appeal versus a readiness to play pro football?
Well, I think, of course, it's just human nature. It's just a maturation process, and it's very unique from the standpoint of college to pro than it is once they're in pro. Now, very seldom will you see guys that are drafted that really develop tremendously in the pros. Now, there's been a couple of guys that I've drafted that have been in their 20s, like an Alex Smith. When I drafted him, he was 20 years old coming out. So he's just a pup, where a lot of these guys, especially with the pandemic situation, a lot of these guys nowadays are at least 22, 23 coming out. Some are 25 and 26, which, I was always told 27s when males physically develop fully. After 27s when testosterone starts dropping, whatever doctors say, which I don't know if it's true or not, but I agree with it because they're doctors. But I think for me, I first identify talent off of their tape, maybe as a sophomore, as a junior in college. Okay. And I bet you 8 to 9 out of 10 of those guys as D linemen and O linemen lack physical strength to play in the NFL. Now you could line up and function, but like to play like a starter type role in the NFL as an O lineman, D lineman, I bet you 80-90% of the guys that come out of college, especially a year early or 2 years early, are underdeveloped physically. Now, everybody thinks that's lifting weights. Well, he did 225 30 times. That's not football strength. That's weightlifting strength, which is great if you're going to be pushing like an O lineman, from your chest out, or a D lineman from your chest out. But a lot of the strength is just God given. It's like quickness, speed, intelligence, reaction times. A lot of physical is God given, and you see in these world strength, the strongest men in the world, you never see them playing football, ever. And a lot of them will tell you they can't. They're not good enough athletes to do it, but they can lift, 800 pounds, which is totally phenomenal. But I think for the positions, it wavers. But I know for O-line and D-line, with me, I identify in the fall watching tape. I bet you 8 to 9 out of 10 of my reports I write on O-linemen, especially O-linemen, I say needs to improve overall strength or needs to improve overall base, which means base is through his hips and his thighs and his hamstrings and his lower body, just plain solid. Like when you run into them, some guys you can't move. They're just thick, and heavy, thick density. And then there's other guys you run into and you knock them off track right away. That's God given. I've had friends where I'd wrestle and we're the same weight and I can't move them. As other guys, they're the same weight as me that I have wrestled, I can just dominate. So there's a leverage balance to it. There's an instinct to it, and there's a God-given fact to it. But it's O-line and D-line, it's very important that play strength, that natural human strength to line up early in their career and play in the NFL. They have to have it, otherwise they'll just get dominated. And that's why it takes some of these cats a year to 2 years, sometimes 3 years, to develop at those big man positions, as we call big body positions, just because they can't line up strength wise yet. And some of that strength stuff comes from just instincts, knowing, like as a wrestler, you feel leverage. When a D lineman is trying to spin on you, to spin back inside if you're an O lineman, and that's just not so much strength to control him. That's just the instinct to get back in front of him, and show that you have a good base because he can't move you because you're staying square the whole time. Well, that's just knowing angles. That's just feeling the leverage, and that adds to your strength. So there's a lot of different measurements, and especially nowadays with all this analytics about, you can measure the size of their knee, when they're 21, and it'll tell you they're going to grow 2 more inches and gain another 20 pounds. Well, I don't believe any of that stuff. I think everybody's wired different. Everybody's got different genetics, and there's some reason there's Olympics, and some people can make it, some people can't. And I'm telling you, majority of it's just God-given instincts, strength, quickness, athleticism, natural toughness. You can't put your finger on it, but you can definitely see it on tape because the good players out of college, they dominate. And that's what you look for, especially on the lower levels, just pure domination. Like, a brother playing against a 2-year-old or 2 year younger brother the 2-year-old brother better dominate. That's what you look for in the football from a strength standpoint. But a lot of guys don't have it. You
You
know,
think
now they'll develop it to be good enough to be. We call it functional strength. He's functionally strong throughout his body. But there's some guys like Penei Sewell came out a couple of years ago. I mean, it's just amazing. It's a man versus boys. You know, on the college level. Of course, that changes on the NFL level, but it's just what God gave him, like his brother this year, gave him so much power and explosion in their body. They don't know what to do with it sometimes. It's very unique.
Do you think we've lost something in the increasing trend in the league to start rookies immediately then? Because in the past, the rookies would perhaps get a bit more time to develop physically and mentally, and especially at quarterback. We see these players often rushed in before they're ready these days.
Well, see, I got both examples. When I was in Seattle, my first year, we drafted Alex, the first pick overall, Alex Smith. And, you know, I talked to the coaches, the ownership, everything prior to the draft, many, many months before the draft. And our game plan was no matter what, he will not see the field his rookie year. The guy's 20 years old. He comes from a spread system. You know, it's Utah, Urban Meyer. The guy never even called a huddle. Not even in high school did he ever call a huddle. You know, so you got to realize that stuff. But I've been on the other end of it too with Russell Wilson in Seattle, where he started as a rookie. And that's phenomenal because we didn't force it. He earned it. He won it. But now you got a rookie contract. So now we go out and sign 2 D linemen during the season in free agency or trade for them because we got the cap space because of the great rookie contract on the quarterback. And we made the #1 defense in the NFL. Hell, we won the Super Bowl. Now, Russell was our quarterback, don't get me wrong. But our defense and special teams won the Super Bowl for us, won the playoffs for us, you know. But Russell was a quarterback. But see, everybody wants to start the young quarterback because of the contract situation, you know, because you go other ways in free agency, or you can make trades and you can go get an Odell Beckham who's on the street right now or whatever because you got the money to do it, you know. But you can't force the issue either because we've seen that in our first year in San Fran. We had to play Alex because we had our other 3 quarterbacks got hurt, you know, and so he had no choice to line him up, and it was awful, you know, and he got his butt just handed to him. So because we weren't a good team, we had the first picks, we had a bad offensive line, we had really no running game at the time. So what you want to do, you want to play early, but also you can't force the issue at any position, but especially quarterback, you know. But that contract stuff, and owners see that, and they see how we did in Seattle, and they're like, wow, we can do it that way, or you can do it like the Rams did it and buy free agency, but now you're paying for it. You know, there's Tampa Bay, who I work with, is paying for it because of Brady, but they also won a world championship because of it, you know. So, but people want a quarterback on a rookie deal, of course, everybody does, but it's as you're well aware, it's hard to come by. Very.
I wanted to read this quote to you. I thought it was a very interesting quote from John Schneider, funnily enough, last week. He said, you have to be able to project where a player's going. You can't just look at here's A, B, and C, and that's part of the game. You have to be able to say, here's A, B, and C. What's it going to look like at X, Y, and Z? Where are they going to be? That's the study, that's the art, that's the projection that's involved. So I wanted to ask you, Scott, how much is projection and therefore scouting a bit of an art form? And is it something that you've just got to have that talent or an eye for decision making to make inspired decisions?
Well, I think honestly, a lot of it is just doing a lot of hard work, and also knowing your team, knowing your coaching staff, not only your coordinators and your head coach, but your position coach, what they're looking for, what's their ideal outside linebacker, height, weight, speed. You know, is there a cutoff line where he's too short or is 40 times too slow? You know, because everyone's built different, like I said. You know, but there's also the thing that's unique about it, which I think, you know, I was told by Ron Wolf, who my first boss with Green Bay, was that college personnel is a lot tougher than pro personnel, because on pro personnel, you're doing good versus good when you're watching tape. You know, it might be, you know, say Atlanta Falcons who have a bad record versus, you know, Kansas City. You're still going to see a heck of a game by football players. You know, now the score might end up being totally different, but you're going to see good football by both sides. College-wise, you might go into CU, Colorado University, after 3 weeks of the season, that they might have played Northern Colorado, Colorado State, and Western State Colorado. So you're watching them against much lesser competition. And that's what I was saying earlier about pure domination. The good players will dominate those games physically, athletically, watching tape, watching live. You just know who the best player is. He stands out. It's simple to see. But then there's other guys where you have to foresee. Say I'm watching a kid from Winston-Salem State, smaller school. Say he's an old lineman. Say he measures as a junior going to the senior year. Say he was 6'5 1/4", 285 pounds, both verified. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now you worry about the substance, you worry about the strength already because he's a tall, narrow guy. For football. Now you go and look at him physically, and in your own mind, you're like, wow. Shoot, he's 285 last spring. He was 20 years old. Okay, so now he's 21. He looks 300 to me. Hell, this guy might have, a year from now, might be 320. So you got to kind of see that. And it's not just on the one person to see it, but the first person needs to identify. Listen, I know he measured 6'5", 280 last year. But he's going to measure 6'5" this year. He's going to measure 310. And everybody's like, wow. So he's gained 25 pounds. Is it good weight, bad weight? And all of a sudden you say it's good weight. Now you got something. Now your gut's telling you, whoa, this kid's growing. He's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. He just gained 15 pounds from last year to this year. What's going to happen in the following year? And if it's good weight, now you got a prospect that's legit. It's just not adding bad fat, pizza, beer weight. It's adding muscle. It's adding, he's doing everything right. His diet, all that stuff. So you can see it's important to him. So that starts your portfolio with just building a picture of him, and there's usually, once you're in the league 3 to 4 years, which I think starts hurting scouts more than helps them, you start comparing them to guys you scouted 3 or 4 years ago. Like I might say, well, he reminds me of Anquan Bolden, who came out 20-some years ago. Well, a lot of scouts nowadays only know who that Anquan Bolden is, but people that know NFL know it. But you compare them, which is great because it gives the GM or the director an idea of what you see in this player. But like I said earlier, no two players are ever the same, no matter what. No matter, they might have the exact same height, weight, speed, arm length, hand size, shuttles, all that. But half the stuff, when it comes down to it, is what they have upstairs, between their ears. That's what makes an average player good, a good player great, and a great player special. Physical skills are there. All NFL players have it to a certain extent. It's the mental, and you try to get in their mental. That's why the combine's so important. The All-Star games are so important because you get to sit down with them with a face-to-face, really for the first time. And you start trying to figure these guys out because you can see the talent. Anybody can identify talent. You got to identify the person, which plays into half of the prospect you're getting when it's said and done. So you try to get in their head. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not nothing like that. I just try to figure out, are they a real guy's guy? Will they fit in the locker room? Will they fit in the meeting room? Will they fit around the veterans? Will they fit around the young guys? That type of stuff. So there's millions of angles to go into it. And that's why it's such an inexact science, because people think they can identify it. Hell, I've been with teams. We brought 2 psychiatrists to the combine, sat in our interviews with the players. They couldn't figure them out. They're supposed to be professionals. They're like, these guys are messed up. Well, yeah, they're NFL football players. They're gonna be. Yeah, they're screwed up. They live for contact. They live to hurt people. So there's many attributes go into it, but a gut feeling. I think the good area scouts, first and foremost, 100%, they got to bust their tails. But second of all, it's just kind of like a player has. It's like a natural instinct that I think the good ones can identify traits that other scouts can't. A lot of it comes to just being around an experience and being around successes and failures. And why did so-and-so succeed when he didn't work out well, but so-and-so was the #1 tester and he can't get on the field? Because there's so much goes into the football aspect of it, not just the athleticism aspect.
Generally, when you looking at a quarterback, what are you actually looking for, Scott?
Well, the thing about it is your first exposure to them is always tape or practice or a game live, because you don't really touch underclassmen until you need to, because you got enough seniors coming out or draft eligible players coming out each year. That'll keep you busy at that school that day. But, so your first exposure usually is game, either practice, game live, or tape, of course, live. So you get out that with the quarterback. I always look for, first and foremost, I want to find out from the coaches before I start watching them, what kind of leader is he? Is he the alpha? In the off season, does he line up meetings? Does he get guys together to throw, to have beer parties, to pizza parties, whatever? Is he the alpha? Do guys attract to him? If he goes to a party, people want to be around him type guy. So that's first and foremost. Then, on tape, I always look for from the get-go. I don't care how big they are. I don't care about their stats, any of that. I want to see them drop back on third downs, on passing situations, and just see their presence, see their feet. Are they really anxious with their feet, meaning or they always move their feet like they can't get settled, or they drop back, 5-step, put the foot in the ground, boom, progressing from 1 to 2 to 3, got action going around them, pass rushers, blitzing, whatever coming after them, and just see a guy that can stay in there and be poised. Not duck when he throws, not bend down, worry about getting hit, but a guy will stand in the pocket and make the throw with the linebacker coming down on a blitz, and stride and step into the throw and make it. I think that shows presence, that shows toughness, it shows competitiveness, and it shows being a damn good teammate because you're giving yourself up for the other 10 guys on the field and everybody on the sideline, that's on your team. So I think if you can find a guy, like there's one this year, I'm not going to say who, but it just controls the game from the pocket with his eyes, with his patience, with his poise. The play's never over. You always think he's going to make the play when he's outside the pocket. It's just one of those gut feelings. It's like, wow, something good's going to happen here. Where with other guys in this draft, they get outside the pocket, anything can happen. They might throw it in the stands. They might throw it 15 yards short. They might throw it right to the other team. But you can see that they're never relaxed in the pocket. It doesn't feel natural. But when you watch the good ones, it's just like a Sunday walk for them. They stay in the pocket. There's guys going behind them, guys coming from their left. They just stand in there and they're focused on progressing from 1 to 2 to 3 and making the play. And that shows up in tape pretty quick because, you can see first and second and 2, you and I could be a good quarterback because it's going to be play action. Someone's going to be open. The tight end's going to be open. The back's going to be open in the flat, whatever. But on third downs, when the defense knows you're throwing and everybody in the stadium knows you're throwing and you got to throw to make the first down, that's why I like to start with those plays and watch those. And that doesn't make them a first rounder or 7th rounder, but that gives me a good idea. This guy's got some balls because you have to be in the NFL to play quarterback. People don't understand. Well, he only got sacked 4 times that game. Yeah, but he got knocked down 12. He's hurried 14 times. Twice on the sideline, he got knocked down. So all of a sudden, you get to 20 knockdowns. For any player, running backs, their careers last 3 years because they touch the ball 20 times a game. These quarterbacks, we expect to play 10 to 15. So you got to have that toughness, and it's not just go out and fight tough. It's just inside, I call it inside fortitude. What's in your gut? What's inside you that's going to make you on that 4th down, make the play where the other kid wants to tap out? Again, that goes back to identifying the football player. But with quarterbacks, I think first and foremost, you need to see poise. You don't want somebody that's, and I love him to death. And I was part of the draft, and we took him, Baker Mayfield, who I think still going to be a good pro, consistently. But he just gets so strung up. He's like a D lineman on 3rd and 8 every play. He's coming off the edge rushing to get to the quarterback. Well, he's doing that at quarterback to the players. Well, they get anxious in the huddle then. All of a sudden, the quarterback's like, not panicking, but hyper, high strung. The players around him feed off of that. Where if you get a guy in the pocket like a Peyton Manning, it's just like, hey, easy, guys. We got this. Aaron Rodgers, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. It's 3rd and 8. I know exactly what we're going to do. Then all of a sudden, you go to the line of scrimmage, the whole offense feels good. The sideline feels good. The upstairs in the press box feels good because they feel he's going to make a play because he's done it so many times. Where the other guy, it's like 50-50. It's like, well, it could be a 70-yard run for a touchdown. Holy smokes. Then it might be a pick 6 too. You never know. So you want to figure out if the guy's consistent, the guy's the leader, the guy can control the chaos. It's like organized chaos at the line of scrimmage. Because there's so much going on mentally for those cats. You're trying to identify what defense you're in. Do we need to audible? Do we go play it from run to pass to run? Okay, remember last time this safety blitzed on this play. So all it's going through. But yeah, you expect them to still get the ball off with the clock. You expect them to make the play. That's why it's such a unique position. That's why it's so hard to find.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is how do you determine character as an executive? How do you balance out risk versus reward? How does a GM gather information during the course of a player's career? And I guess that could go all the way back to high school to determine whether you trust someone enough to sort of bring them into your building, especially with a high pick.
It's very tough. But again, that's why it's so freaking important. And I won't say any names. There's a player this year that's highly, highly, highly talented at a position it's hard to find. And I've been there before. Lucky enough, I've been around the NFL long enough to do it. It's bad enough I've done it a few times. I've taken that player. And I learned early, and I didn't listen to it because the talent outweighed the character. But my first boss told me, if you make one exception, you'll end up with a team of exceptions. And I never understood what that meant until I got older. it's not just from a height, weight, speed. It's like a small quarterback. If you can take a 5'10" quarterback with the first top 10 pick, you'll be the first one in NFL history to ever do it, to ever have success. Okay, well, there's always going to be a first, but is that going to be you? You know, or you're going to make a mistake by going against the odds of the NFL. Same thing with character. You know, everybody makes mistakes. I've made many of them. It's the ones that keep making the same mistake over that really worry you, because then you got a pattern, you know. And a lot of times, you know, you got to remember, it's not the kid himself, it's a situation he grew up in. And the one kid I'm talking about, I know for a fact, grew up in a real gang infested house, neighborhood, and was raised in the gangs. And that's all he knows, you know. And be like where you were raised, that's all kind of, you know, until a certain age. You know, it's what's common in your mind of seeing every day what goes on. Then you throw these cats into a situation where people like us, they're used to it because they're coaches in college and that stuff, and good universities, and they try to make them. Man, I get all that, but it's the guys that you got to find out who they run with, who's their people. Say you draft them. Say, you know, I remember drafting Frank Gore out of Miami. He thought Seattle was part of Alaska. I mean, he didn't even know any better, you know. So you bring these guys to an environment that they're so far away from. It's not even funny. So you got to play that into it too. How they going to adjust a kid from the Southeast growing up in the Northwest? Well, he'll be fine. You know, hell, he's making millions of dollars. No, you can't think that, because they're just kids. You know, mentally, majority of them are just kids in adult bodies. You know, very gifted adult bodies physically, that they're still making mistakes. So you got to identify, was it a 1-2 time thing? Like, say 2 positive tests over 3 years. That doesn't bother me. You know, if it's weed. Now, if they're doing coke and meth and stuff like that, that's a huge red flag. But if it's weed, I'm fine with a DUI. Don't get me wrong, I don't agree with it, but I'm fine with it. That doesn't make a bad kid. You know, now if all of a sudden he has, you know, 2 positive tests, he has 2 other suspensions that you can't figure out what they're for, which you got to realize it's either because of the drinking or smoking or whatever, or missing meetings or late to meetings, or, you know, not doing right in practice or in school or whatsoever. Something's pulling them away from just that. But it's so important because, like I said earlier, my wife and I can sit here and she can tell me who the best player on tape is while we're watching, because he'll score 2 touchdowns. She'll be like, wow, look how big he is, fast, easy. Okay, well, what kind of guy is he again? What makes him go from average to good to great, great to special? And it's what's inside him, what makes them tick. It's what's in their soul. It's what's in their mind to make them that. And you try so hard to get to it, and you think you know them. But I always told my guys, if you know over 50% of the person as a person that we draft, you're held never scout. Because a lot of the teams that go into this, they might know 25% of the person and think they know them. If you know of at least 50, and that's just 50% of the person, I think that's great. You know, because you really only have a year to 2, possibly 3 years to try to get to know these guys. And you can't talk to them face to face majority of the time. You just got to talk to coaches, and counselors, and teammates about them. You know, so you try and try and try. And that's why there's this rush at the combine to talk to everybody. Well, you're only allowed to talk to 60, you know, so you got to narrow down to 60 you want. Then you got to fly guys in. Like right now, the people are doing flying guys in for visits, for a 1-day visit, just to figure them out. And majority of the time, the guys you bring in for the 30 visits are guys that might have red flags, or small school guys. You want to see how long it's going to take them to adjust to the real football NFL world. You know, so you're always trying to, like I said, you get people involved, and you try to get all these analytics and all these psychiatrists and psychologists and all this stuff involved. When it's all said and done, it comes down to it: is he a good dude? If he's a good dude, you can work with him. Now, he's going to have issues, he's going to have family issues, and that's not his fault. It's where he grew up from. But will he work with you? And does he know right from wrong? You know, then you're going the right direction. But still, and you see these guys get arrested. And nowadays, it's just treacherous with all the social media, because the kids back in the day are no different than the kids nowadays. It's just written nowadays. So everybody thinks, oh, you know, that guy's a bad person. He was involved in this and that. Well, we don't know the whole story. We know what the media says, but we don't know exactly, was he there? Wasn't he there? What went on? Why was he there? You know, type of stuff. So you're always searching. And that's why you make the pick. Everybody's like, that's a great pick. Everybody thinks it is, you know, but you never really, really know till you get them in your building and get around them for a couple months. Then you start seeing their work ethic, their passion for the game, their passion for their teammates, their passion for the coaches, you know, the community. because you want all that stuff to be involved, especially in the higher picks. But it's hard. That's why mistakes are made. You get some bad apples out there. They just can't change. They don't. I mean, you give them money. How are they going to change when they don't have money and they're bad? You give them money, they're going to be worse because the guys they run with, the people they run with.